What is going on, everybody? It's Brendan Abbott coming to you with the KBR Sports Podcast, the best sports podcast of your 24-hour day. Thank you guys for tuning into the podcast today, and I'm glad to tune into some great sports talk, of course. As it always goes, you already know that I always try to cover the most interesting things, or at least that I find most interesting things of the sports week and weekend. So I try to get these podcasts to you guys out as regularly as possible. And I mean, we have a lot to talk about, honestly. And even though I try to always make sure I keep them to a reasonable length because of time constraints, I'm going to talk about a good amount of things on the podcast today. So make sure before, obviously, tune into the rest of the podcast, you guys subscribe to the KBR Sports Podcast on Rabble, Spreaker, YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. That way you get notifications whenever the KBR Sports Podcast is streaming live and when a new episode is posted, as well as following the Twitter pages at my own at Abban Brendan, which is ABBANBRENDAN, as well as the KBR Sports one at KBR_sports, where you'll see different sports topics discussed on each page, and as well as my own personal things that I like to talk about on my Twitter page. So go ahead and check that out, as well as making sure you comment and like on each episode of the KBR Sports Podcast. So that way you always are feeling engaged and you get your opinion out there on whatever topic I might be discussing, because I always want to make sure I'm keeping you all in the loop on any KBR Sports topic that might pop up. But yeah, guys, we had a eventful sports weekend, of course, and the week has been kicked off with a lot of different things to see throughout the sports week. So I'm glad that we have a moment here to talk about it all. I mean, talk about the Vikings and how they've looked this season and how underwhelming they've been with the new addition, in which that everybody thought was going to be what put them over the top. Then LeBron, Dwyane Wade rematching it up one last time. Best friends, always been rivals at the same time, and how they've pushed each other throughout each other's careers, and also how that dynamic worked and what was the main factor that made it work. And then talking about the Los Angeles Rams and what is the one thing that can stop them from making it to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to talk about all those things. But first, guys, let me get things kicked off by talking about this. So when the offseason came, we all talked about how each team that was looking to make a Super Bowl run, each team that was poised and put in position to make a run to the Super Bowl, that was most likely going to win the Super Bowl and everything like that. And during the offseason, it seemed like the Minnesota Vikings were going to be that team for many reasons, because we all thought, oh man, with Case Keenum, they were so good, they got to a point where they made it to the NFC Championship. Granted, while some people might have thought it was a fluke, they still made it to that point. Now, come back and people are saying, okay, so now what happens if you change out Case Keenum for Kirk Cousins? It should be a better team, right? The team should have a higher ceiling because, of course, Kirk Cousins is better than Case Keenum. I mean, if you just take out the same exact team and then put in a better quarterback, obviously you're going to get a better product on the field. And so that's what most of us tended to think. That's why a lot of people ended up choosing the Vikings to make it to the Super Bowl. But for some reason, that's not exactly how it worked out. For some reason, this team just hasn't been as good under Kirk Cousins as it was under Case Keenum. And it's not like the team has been, or Kirk Cousins has been bad or anything. I mean, let's take a look back at Case Keenum's year from last year, okay, and compare the two up until this point, 13 games in, all right, because at this point, when Case Keenum had played 13 games, he had a 67.9% completion percentage, pretty much 68. He had thrown for 3,219 yards, 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a passer rating of 98.9, and he was leading the Vikings. I mean, they ended up having a 13-3 record last year. So the Vikings were at the top class of the NFL along with the NFC. And then we're looking at Kirk Cousins' looks or stats from this year, and I mean, he hasn't played bad. That's the thing. He has thrown for 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he's averaging 284.5 yards per game. And it has a pass rating of 98.4 and a QBR of 61.1. Now, when we're looking at what Case Keenum did last year, yeah, he had a higher passer rating and so on. But I would take Kirk Cousins' numbers over what Case Keenum has provided me. But it just seems like this Vikings team is just different from last year. I mean, even though we could say, yeah, they might have gotten injured along the way, that hasn't really been the case. I mean, right now, if we're looking at their injury reserve, has really makes a difference. Mike Hughes, I mean, he played 6 games, had 2 starts. Andrew Sendejo, he was a big defensive back. He started 5 out of the first 5 games and everything, but he's been out. But guys like Trey Waynes has played every game except 1. Eric Kendricks played every game except 1. He's actually played in every game. Stephon Diggs has only missed 1 game all year. And Xavier Rhodes only missed 1 game all year. Now, when we're looking at different aspects of this team, I mean, I guess we can kind of look at things like the defense and see how different that defense is in terms of last year. They were first in yards and first in points allowed. But then the offense under Case Keenum was 11th in yards and 10th in points scored. But then we do the flip side of it, and it's weird because their defense is 3rd in yards, so it's not like they're bad, and they're 8th in points allowed. But the offense is 22 in yards and 24th in points scored. And we can only look back at one thing and look at Kirk Cousins and say, what's going on, man? Because, yeah, and this has been the thing about all that Washington fans were saying before Kirk was coming up for that contract, and why Washington fans didn't want to end up paying him out. Because Kirk is a tricky one, because he gets his numbers, without a doubt. Kirk Cousins puts up numbers. He's able to rack up stats with the best of them. The only problem is just how conducive a lot of times are those stats to winning. How conducive are those stats to leading a potent offense or putting a team out on the field that's going to be a contending team? And the Vikings at the time last year were looking way more dangerous under Case Keenum than they were Kirk Cousins. And this is even in a division where the Packers have fallen off. And while the Lions have been a dangerous team, it's not like the Lions have this big lead over what the Vikings are. The Bears. The Bears have this big lead over what the Vikings are. So when we're looking at it, it's just interesting to see how the dichotomy in terms of how different one team has been from the beginning of the year and what we thought they were going to be to what they actually are now. And I don't know if that's something that you put on the different coordinators leaving, like one of the coordinators going to the Giants and so on and things like that. But this is just a completely different team. And I think it's underwhelming to say that that's what they've been all year. I mean, it's truly the facts. After this 21-7 loss to the Seattle Seahawks, I mean, what else can you describe this team to be aside from underwhelming? Don't really think you can find another adjective to describe them. And it's an interesting fact of seeing how much of a difference 1 year can make on a team, especially when you bring in that quarterback that you think is going to be the guy to lead the team to prosperity. I think a lot of people, I'm not going to say an extreme person like Aaron Rodgers or something like that, but guys, let's just say we take another person like a Matthew Stafford or somebody and put them with the Minnesota Vikings, or if we take, I guess I'm looking at the cream of the crop here, but if we take a lot of different quarterbacks and we just plop them in Minnesota, do we think Minnesota looks a lot better than they do now? Guys like Russell Wilson, a guy like Drew Brees, guys like Matt Ryan, so many other players that, do we think that they can make a case of being better, that the team could be a lot better if that quarterback was there? Because right now, it doesn't make much has changed with the team. Grant, I did say some coordinators have left to go get head coaching jobs and so on. But it just makes it interesting to see that those little things, especially when you're supposed to be that piece that puts them over the top, and they've pretty much regressed to the mean. That's interesting. That's so interesting. But guys, let me transition to my next topic where I'm actually going to talk some hoops. And wanted to talk about LeBron and Dwyane Wade's final time meeting each other in the NBA. And it's going to be one of those things we look back on and say, this is one of the most unique friendships and partnerships that we've ever seen forged in a professional setting, in a league or anything like that. Just because of the nature of how people want things to be, how the media plays things up. The media wants us to have adversaries and high competition. That's what they got from Michael Jordan. That's what they got from Kobe. That's what they got from Bird and Magic. And they want that with today's age of superstars. And it was interesting to see that LeBron and Dwyane Wade, even at a time where they are both top 5 players in the league, arguably top 3 at one point, that they decided to set things aside and be like, hey, why are we going to go at each other to try and reach a common goal instead of just joining up and make reaching that goal so much easier? And that's essentially the mindset that they had when joining up in Miami. And all that doesn't happen unless Dwyane Wade is willing to kind of shed some of his spotlight that he had in Miami and give it up to those other 2 guys in Chris Bosh and LeBron James. And in many respects, Dwyane Wade sacrificed the most out of it's not in many respects. In all respects, Dwyane Wade sacrificed the most out of all those guys. And it was aside from maybe Chris Bosh in terms of how much his role was affected, but Dwyane Wade sacrificed the most in terms of money, in terms of giving up his city, in terms of changing his game, and so many things. Dwyane Wade sacrificed a ton to be able to play aside Chris Bosh and LeBron James. And when we look back on it now, we have to give a lot of credit to Dwyane Wade because, I granted, everybody talks about wanting to be the guy, wanting to be the man on a team. And so many times I say that's so overrated. And Dwyane Wade is a perfect example of that. Dwyane Wade had a situation where he was the sole creator and everything for the Miami Heat. It was called Wade County down in South Florida because of how much of a role Dwyane Wade played in terms of doing everything for that team and because of the championship he brought to them in 2006. But Wade was at a point where he would be dropping 50 points. I'll never forget a game in, I think, 2009 when Dwyane Wade dropped 50 points and the guy seemed like he was just on another level, and yet they lost to the Orlando Magic in that same game. Dwyane Wade had dropped 50 points and they still lost. So it's one of those situations where you're looking in, at some point you're a guy, you're saying, okay, what do I got to do here? What can I do to make sure that I'm not wasting my efforts? I'm not hitting. And if you really watch Dwyane Wade's game and you remember it, Dwyane Wade goes to the ground a lot. Dwyane Wade, he got injured. He injured his shoulder, injured his knees, everything. And a lot of his game would be attacking the basket, getting to the rim and all that. And while it was amazing to watch, it takes a toll on your body. And it's one of those things where you have to sit back at the end of the season after you're counting your wounds, licking your wounds, at whatever it may be, after a first round exit and saying, is it worth what I'm putting my body through? Is all that I'm going through worth it at the end of the season just to be knocked out in the first round? And you saw that Dwyane eventually was just like, no, it's not. It's not worth it. I want to get back to the mountaintop. I want to be in the conversation with guys like Kobe and other guys because he really looked up to Kobe. Kobe was his main rival that he saw in the NBA. He said Kobe was the guy he enjoyed playing against the most besides LeBron James, just because of how much Kobe brought out of him, how much Kobe forced him to take his game to the next level. And trust me, Dwyane and Kobe had battles. They had battles. So those were enjoyable to watch. But Dwyane knew that I'm never going to be put in that conversation with a guy like Kobe or other people with just one championship. So he was willing to take the sidekick or take a step back, especially after the first year in Miami where that ended up in a debacle in the finals in which the Heat lost. And Dwyane did something that I think so people give him credit for, they don't give him enough credit for, because he took a step back and said, LeBron, this is your team. If we're going to win, we're gonna have to play with you being our leader, with you being the main guy to carry the torch and everything. But if you ask me, yeah, it was needed, but at the same time it wasn't, because they got to the finals in that first year with how things were between the team, and they started playing a lot better midway towards the end of the season. And if LeBron literally just plays like regular LeBron in that finals, Dwyane Wade put on a performance that was amazing in that finals. He was the leading scorer in that finals for the Heat, and LeBron was like the third leading scorer. But if LeBron literally just plays like his regular self and leads the team in scoring, at least second to Dwyane Wade, whatever it may be, if the two are at least on the same line or scope of scoring in that finals and production, they win the finals against the Mavericks. But LeBron literally just was just gone. Like it was not the same guy that we had watched for the 7 years ahead of that. It was just not the same guy. Even against the Spurs, it wasn't the same guy. Then when LeBron got swept in the finals against the Spurs just outwitted him, and they knew his holes in his game. The Mavericks knew the holes in his game, but LeBron, it was like he shrunk And that is an understatement in a lot of respects. When you have 8 points at the end of a game in the NBA Finals, you are mini-me is not even, subatomic level of shrinking. Honey, I Shrunk the Kid small. Like he disappeared. And so when we're looking at what kind of role Dwyane Wade played in making that whole tandem work, because guys, don't forget, at one point when LeBron was deciding whether or not he was going to stay in Miami after the 4th year they all had played together, LeBron had opted out to become a free agent, and Dwyane Wade had opted out too. And because he didn't know what LeBron was going to do, he opted out so that way he could try and restructure his contract in the case that LeBron wanted to stay, and they could sign for a long-term deal as well as Chris Bosh. But LeBron never informed Dwyane Wade of what he wanted to do. And you can make the case, no, there is a case that Dwyane would have saved over $10 million if he would have just opted into his current contract. But he wouldn't have been able to do so if LeBron wanted to come back to the team. So he opted out in hopes that LeBron would want to come back. But that just ended up costing Dwyane a crap ton of money. So now we look at it, and if you had to tell me, hey, that's my best friend, and in a way you're playing with each other, so you're like business partners in some respects, but that's my best friend, we're playing for each other and everything like that, and you can't inform me of a decision ahead. And now LeBron has his own reasons for why he didn't inform Dwyane. Maybe he felt like Dwyane might be conflicted if he actually knew what LeBron wanted to do between telling Pat Riley or keeping it to himself, because Pat Riley wanted Dwyane to let him know what LeBron's plans were, and Dwyane wasn't going for that, and Dwyane just didn't know. He told Pat Riley, I seriously don't know. And to Pat, it was like, that's bullarchy that you don't know, and that's your best friend. But it was one of those situations where, because Dwyane didn't know and he ended up opting out, it cost him millions of dollars. And if you're telling me I'm losing millions of dollars over another guy's decision that could have been prevented, that other guy would have just gave me a heads up, yeah, I'm probably going to feel a type of way about it. I don't know what Dwyane Wade did, but here's one thing that I give credence to Dwyane Wade's character, and why I think Dwyane Wade deserves the most respect and admiration throughout this last dance that he's putting on throughout the league. Because Dwyane Wade has never given an inkling that he had an issue with LeBron after their breakup. Dwyane Wade's never even shown a shred of resentment towards LeBron since that Heat team, since he left. And that decision LeBron made led to a lot of things. It led to Dwyane Wade and Pat Riley having their own beef. Led to Dwyane Wade going to Chicago instead of just being a Heat lifer. It led to so many different things. And of course, even Dwyane Wade decided to come back and join LeBron in Cleveland. So that even says something to the nature of how Dwyane Wade was willing to just kind of move past things and let bygones be bygones in a lot of respects, and he valued the friendship over the money, which is something I don't think a lot of people would do. I generally don't, especially for that kind of money. $10 million is a lot of money. And you're talking no state income tax, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And so he gave all that up, and he still maintained the friendship with LeBron. I mean, watching those two play against each other in their final game, you saw the enjoyment. You saw in the tribute video. You see it in the hugs that LeBron gets to Dwyane. You see in their most iconic photo of one another that those are just memories you don't let go away. And I think it's one of those things that Dwyane Wade sees in the bigger picture, or he saw in the bigger picture, that I would hate to spoil all those memories and spoil this friendship I've cultivated with somebody since we got drafted in the same draft class over the money. Because in a lot of ways you could say that Dwyane Wade is the reason why LeBron is even a champion, or even considered in the greatest of all time conversation with Michael Jordan. Because Dwyane Wade, if he didn't do what he did, LeBron probably would have never won a championship. I think he would have got one. But you're not getting compared to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and others with just one ring. It's just not going to cut it. And so in a lot of ways, Dwyane Wade saved the bacon of LeBron's career. You can refute that on me. I don't care. It's just a fact to me. If Dwyane Wade never would have joined up with LeBron, and LeBron didn't have that crew that he rolled into the finals with for 4 straight years, I don't know if he would have gotten those 2 championships elsewhere. staying in Cleveland, you're never going to get Kyrie because the team is going to be too good to get that draft pick. The management was just too inept. I don't know how they would have ever made a trade or anything like that to bring in somebody to play alongside you that would have been on equal footing of a Kyrie Irving or a Kevin Love. So it's an interesting thing to look at. And I think Dwyane Wade deserves a lot of credit in terms of just the overall person and human being that he is, in terms of being able to take that backseat role and be willing to let LeBron assume the primary status of leader on the team, despite that being Dwyane's team for what was 7 years ahead of that moment. All right, guys, going to my first break and wanted to talk about Fanatics, guys. Fanatics is the best apparel and memorabilia company. They always take care of me if I ever have any sports needs or anything like that. And I've gotten great t-shirts, jerseys, pants, workout outfits, everything from Fanatics. And I just always recommend Fanatics to any of my friends, to any of my family members. Obviously, I help a lot of people get their Fanatics gear because I always recommend it to them. I always tell them, hey, go through here. This is how you get the best price. And they always end up doing so. And then they are never disappointed with what they get. And obviously, Fanatics is even one of the best in terms of customer service if an order you want isn't exactly up to your standards are. So guys, give a call to Fanatics at 954-507-6928. So that way you're getting the best prices on any of your gear that you're trying to get, especially with the winter season around the corner, guys. It's going to get chilly. You need new stuff. You need to bundle up. It's getting pretty chilly, depending on where you live now. South Florida, look, it stays pretty warm around the year. California, it can get kind of chilly out there as well, but it does stay rather warm around the time. If you live up in the Northeast, though, I know you need some new clothes to bundle up. And why not bundle up with some nice Fanatics gear, guys? I'm just saying. Give a call to that number I told you about so you get all the stuff you need to bundle up at the best prices. All right, y'all, so I'm going to jump into talking about my next topic and final topic of the podcast, in which I'm going to allude to about the Los Angeles Rams. Los Angeles Rams, man, it's interesting because that's my team. No surprise about that. No, that's my favorite team, and I don't believe I'm biased in discussing the Rams at all. I'm 100% straightforward with it. But one thing I will say, in which, having watched all the Rams games of the season and everything like that, I know what the team does when they play at their best and what they tend to do when they get away from playing at their best and they kind of put themselves in positions to lose games. And they put themselves in bad positions to lose games because they start playing out of whack and they start kind of derailing from a lot of things, and it just gets a little messy. So when we're looking at this Rams team and I'm discussing them, one of the things that I think the Rams tend to do that could stop them from making it to the Super Bowl is putting the ball in Jared Goff's hands too much. Now you're saying, well, Jared Goff was an MVP candidate the whole night. He was right up there with Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, and whoever else. Yeah, he was. And I mean, you can make case he still is. Rams are only 11-2. But when we're looking at Jared Goff's outings in a lot of cases, Jared Goff is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's a good quarterback. He's as accurate as they come, and he can make pretty much any NFL throw. The problem with Jared Goff is that when you put the ball in his hands too much, especially with a pass rush, he can be susceptible to turning the football over. And that is no secret. That is just a fact. Especially against a team like the Chicago Bears defense that has guys like a Khalil Mack on that line who can make a case for being Defensive Player of the Year, you putting the ball in Jared Goff's hands in a lot of cases can lead to just fumbles, which he does tend to do a good amount, especially throughout the season, and interceptions. And Jared Goff isn't the Rams' best player by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not. And anybody that would tell you he is doesn't watch the Rams enough to know otherwise. So when you're looking at how the Rams end up playing against the Bears and how their offense, the shape of what their offense took, I mean, Jared Goff, look at this is how Jared Goff played against the Bears. He threw the ball 44 times, completed 20 of his passes, threw no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, had 180 yards, mind you, on 44 passing attempts. And he had a 6.2 QBR and a 19.1 passer rating. That's horrible. That is god-awful. And it's one of those situations where you're looking at it and you're saying, man, it's not like they don't have this guy in the backfield that, I don't know, was an MVP candidate that scored a touchdown for 12 to 13 straight games, broke a record, Eric Dickerson's record, in terms of scoring touchdowns in back-to-back games. And they only gave Todd Gurley 14 touches in that game. 14 touches, 11 carries, had 28 yards. And mind you, I'm not one of those people that just says pound it in the ground multiple times to just beat the drum bear or whatever the thing is, beat a dead rabbit, whatever, whatever the saying is. But I do believe that you put the ball in your best player's hands and you let them make plays. And for a lot of the afternoon, I think the Rams are evening actually. I think the Rams got away from that. They ended up resulting to letting Jared Goff throw the ball continuously. And Sean McVay didn't do what the team's bread and butter is, which is running the football. That team is built around Todd Gurley. Everything stems from what Todd Gurley can do in the backfield. Their formations, their play action, their fake jet sweeps. All that is because of the threat that Todd Gurley serves in the backfield. If there are this many people required in the box to account for Todd Gurley, if you run a sweep to the outside when Todd Gurley gets the fake, all those people have to actually play respectfully up on the line against Todd Gurley to anticipate a possible inside zone or whatever run that Todd Gurley might be doing. So then that gives space for a guy like Robert Woods or Brandon Cooks to run on the outside. If you do play action, when you're faking the handoff to Todd Gurley, those linebackers have to come up a bit to actually see, hey, does Todd Gurley have the ball? Because if he has that handoff and you're not up there, next thing you know, he's out there for a 10-yard gain. Or maybe even more, since he has the ability to break tackles and break runs like nobody else's business. So when you're looking at how the Rams offense is built and predicated on, the Bears defense without a doubt was dedicated to stopping Todd Gurley. But just because the team is dedicated to stopping him doesn't mean that you give up on that thing that makes your team great. Because the Rams said, okay, Todd, we're not having as much success with Todd, let's just put the ball in Jared Goff's hands. Only one problem with that. The Bears wanted you to throw the football. They know they have pass rushers that can get to Jared Goff, that can impact his throws, and they have a great secondary that can make life tough out there for Rams wide receivers and other skill players. So the Rams to me are a team like now with this loss, they fall to second in the conference behind the Saints because they lost to the Saints, which gives the Saints the tiebreaker. So now that makes an interesting dichotomy of where we see as which team can win out. Well, both teams went out. The Saints were just this close to losing last week in their game against the Buccaneers. And then the Rams, they end up dropping that game to the Bears. And you can make a case that both teams have a tough slate of games coming up. And so it's going to be interesting to see which team could pull it out. But I think in a lot of cases, the Rams, in both of their losses, they have given the ball to Todd Gurley 20 times. He's gotten the ball under 20 times in terms of receiving and carries. So if you want to win, I think you give your best player the ball and give him a chance to take you there. You don't put the ball in the other guy's hands. Jared Goff, don't get me wrong, he's a good quarterback. But the problem is I don't want Jared Goff throwing the ball 44 times, especially against a good defense. Idealistically, he's throwing it between 30 to 35, and I got Todd Gurley running it or touching the ball at least 25 times. And if we can't make a play with Todd Gurley, at least I lost knowing, hey, I gave my best player 25 chances to make something happen. And if nothing came from it, I can't regret because I gave him the ball. I gave him the opportunity. The other team was just better than us that day. But then if I'm looking back and I'm saying, man, Todd Gurley only touched it 14 times, and that's my best player, and Jared Goff threw it 44, that's an issue, man. That's an issue. But all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for the KBR Sports Podcast, the best sports podcast of your 24-hour day. Make sure you guys follow and subscribe to the KBR Sports Podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and Rabble, so that way you guys get notifications whenever a new episode is posted and whenever it is streaming live, as well as following the KBR Sports Twitter page at KBR_sports, and my own at Abin Brendan, where you'll find all different updates on sports topics and everything like that on there. So go check it out, and make sure you comment, like, and share the podcast to show some support for the KBR Sports Podcast, just as well as voicing your own opinions on any topic that might get discussed during the podcast. I always like to hear your feedback. And make sure you check out my website, BrendanAbin.com. Have new content regularly posted on there, whether it's a new blog, a new podcast episode, or something like that. Go make sure you check it out. You can see my Twitter feeds on there, to the KBR Sports Twitter feed, as well as my own, and an email link to if anybody ever needs to get in contact with me. You can find it on my website. So make sure you guys go and check that out. And yeah, guys, got a whole bunch of things coming up on the slate of different topics to talk about for the upcoming week. I mean, I didn't even touch on the Patriots game and Rob Gronkowski being in on that last play, and which resulted in the Dolphins winning that. So that's going to be interesting. Steelers 3-game losing streak. So many things to talk about. So might see all that coming to you this Thursday. So keep your eyes open, guys. Always appreciate you all staying up with the podcast and always giving support for the podcast. And couldn't ask for a better community here on, whether it's from YouTube or whether it's on iTunes or SoundCloud. Couldn't ask for a better podcast community. You guys are always great in terms of giving your feedback and responses and ratings and reviews and everything like that. So definitely want to keep that energy going. And until next time, guys, I'm out.